It shouldn't shock anybody in this room that we're all looking for bad guys. And who we see as the bad guy depends on where we sit and other considerations. Some are going to say the companies have been the bad guys for creating a business model that depended on creating artificial demand. Some will say that it's the unions that are the bad guys for working hard to get agreements that allowed them and their families to aspire to a comfortable place in our middle class, that has allowed us to consume a lot of goods in this country, that has allowed us to have the trajectory of economic growth we've had. Some will say it's the president. Some will say it's Congress for authorizing the funds in the first place that are being utilized to invest in these companies. Some will say it's the people who promoted and sold subprime mortgages to people who couldn't afford them. The bottom line is we are all going to indulge today in a little Monday morning quarterbacking. The alternative to what has happened is a much more drastic result. And if we're all honest about it, we would have to acknowledge that if the actions had not been taken over the last 30 days that have been taken, 2 giant American manufacturers would cease to exist. And there would be no dealers left standing. And there would be no families that would go to work proudly on the line making an American automobile for these 2 proud companies that have such a tradition in our country. And I think all of us are trying to struggle with how we work through this situation full of pain and despair and anger to come out at the other end with companies that are free of government interference and profitable. We want you guys to go make some money, but this hearing is very important today so that we understand the process that has occurred better. These people deserve a full vetting of what happened and why. And most importantly, we need to understand a lot better than we understand right now what happened so we make sure we have not set a precedent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quickly, Mr. Watley and Mr. Lopez, what brands do you sell, Mr. Watley?
Chrysler, Dodge, and Jeep.
Okay, and Mr. Lopez?
I have Chrysler, Dodge, and Jeep, Chevrolet, Pontiac, and Buick.
Okay. And Mr. McElhaney, is it McElhaney?
Yes, that's correct, Senator.
Could you give me a percentage, what percentage of your dealers in your association are multi-points across manufacturers?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I can tell you, for example, 45% of the Toyota dealers also have General Motors franchises, just for one example. The average dealer has roughly 2 dealerships on average.
I'm in my former life, my first husband and his family had car dealerships. So I know a little bit about that. We had Pontiac, BMW, and Chevrolet. And I know a little bit about the car business and undercapitalization and some of the problems and struggles. And I know the long-going fights between the mothership and the dealers. There have been lots and lots of battles over the years, and I understand the passion and the pain here. But I think we all have to acknowledge that these companies are broke, and they're not going to succeed unless they get smaller. And we've got to figure out a way forward that's fair to the dealers, but at the same time, I don't think we can micromanage and insist they stay bigger. That's why they went broke. Let me ask this this is a difficult question, Mr. Press, but I looked in we've gotten some information that came to us back channel about the DIP budget. And this is the debtor in possession budget in the bankruptcy. And it talks about the budget for the old company. And what troubles me in there's an acknowledgement that there may be up to 15 employees of old Chrysler working on this bankruptcy. And there's a pool in this budget of up to $20 million for bonuses. I can't imagine what kind of kick in the gut that would be if we were to learn in the next 2 weeks that some of the old Chrysler folks, which are getting paid their salaries, which they should, you guys are doing hard work, but if there's $20 million in bonuses for as few as 3 to 5 people that are associated with old Chrysler, I think that would be a huge, I think the pitchforks would come out, and I think there would be a real problem. And I know I asked you about this yesterday. Have you learned anything more about that, and can you shed any light on that?
No, Senator, I did make an inquiry. We were not able to find testimony. I can only speculate. I think that would be inappropriate at this time. And I will do my best to see if we can find out concretely what that information is relating to.
Well, I misspoke yesterday. It wasn't in testimony, but it is in a preliminary DIP budget, debtor in possession budget. that has been circulated and has been talked about, and I believe your CFO has referred to it in various meetings. So I think we need to get to the bottom of that, and sooner rather than later. I know everything is on a fast track here, but that needs to be also. Let me also bring up briefly something that is not directly related to the dealers, but rather for you, Mr. Henderson, going forward. I understand that you guys are going to try to do a 363 bankruptcy similar to Chrysler.
Yes, ma'am.
Almost in an unprecedented fashion, there has been a decision made in the Chrysler bankruptcy that if somebody buys a Chrysler car 6 weeks ago and there's a defect in that car, there will be liability in the new company for the recall costs, for the warranty costs. They will be required to fix the car. But if because of that defect, a child loses their life because of an accident, or if a man loses his legs because of an accident, there is absolutely nowhere for that person to turn. Now, that to me seems like a very weird result. And it is very unusual in bankruptcy to have absolutely no requirement of insurance for any kind of defects that may be there, especially if the product is going to be carried forward. I need to know on the record, Mr. Henderson, if you all are going to seek that same kind of immunity for existing claims and potential claims for any cars that have been sold prior to the closing of your bankruptcy.
That would be our expectation, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm very troubled by that. I don't get how we can afford to fix the car. But if someone loses their life or limb, by the way, I've understood that since this happened, we've had several companies go back and make filings for 363s now, thinking that they can come in and absolve themselves of any immunity they might of any liability they might have for defects. And I think that's very troubling going forward. And I know I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.